there's so many different creative projects that you can do. And when you're at an art store, the possibilities are endless, and it can be very, very easy to buy a bunch of materials thinking that you're going to use them in the future because you're so excited in the store by all of the possibilities. You dream of the projects that you want to make. You dream of the skills you can have if you buy this thing. And then when we get home and we have all of this new art supplies, how many times do we actually use that new art supplies? In my experience, when I buy something brand new because I was distracted at the art store and it's not something I intentionally went in to get, I rarely use that product. And so when we look at our art supplies in our closets, the stuff that we've shoved away since elementary school, those pens that should have gone out long ago but somehow still work, we look at all of that supplies and we can very easily become overwhelmed by how many options we have. One solution to resolve this feeling of overwhelm is to simply stop buying stuff that you don't intentionally consider before you buy it. When you go into the art store and you see something that you want, you see those shiny new pens, go ahead and sit on it for a little bit. Sit on it for a couple days, a couple weeks, and then if you still want it, if that would still benefit the project that you were working on or that you want to do in the future, by all means, go ahead and buy it. The act of buying so much stuff can also feel like we've already made the thing that we want to make. There's a dopamine hit when we check out at the counter and bring the stuff home and organize it and have the new art supplies. It feels like we are an artist that has already used those supplies, at least it does for me. And it can be very easy to let that initial dopamine hit be the only motivating factor for buying this art supplies. I think that's really beneficial to go into an art store with a list of things that you want. If you're an oil painter, you go in there and you go to the oil painting section. And if you're a knitter, you go into the knitting section with all of the yarn, and you keep your intentions very clear when you're there. Another option that I really like to practice is to simplify what I'm doing. We have all of these art supplies, things that haven't been used in years and things that likely will never be used. It's so overwhelming to just look at all of the supplies and to pick one and to stick with that because there's so many options. So what I do in that situation is I go to the very, very basics. I take a piece of paper and I take a pen and I draw from there. I recently bought this pack of Sharpies and I wasn't using them for a couple weeks. And then I decided to bring them on this hike and to kind of force myself into creating a piece of art that wasn't paint-based and that was constricted by the medium that I brought. Taking just a piece of paper and a pen or a marker is the simplest way to push past that art block that can happen from the feeling of being overwhelmed by all of the supplies. And that's exactly what I did here. These are the Mystic brand Sharpies, so they have a lot of lighter colors, a lot more pastel colors, and I was really interested in exploring that color combination with nature and landscape art. Here you can see I have 4 colors. I didn't bring the whole spectrum of Sharpies. I brought blue and I brought green. And I brought a light version and a dark version of each. So the light version, I mapped out the shape and the flow of the mountains. And then with the dark version of those 2 colors, I mapped out the shadows and gave it more depth. Now I could have brought a lot more colors, a lot more supplies, but in keeping it simple, I was forced into becoming creative within the constraint of the materials that I had. If you constrain yourself with the materials of pen and paper, then you can creatively express yourself through your style, through your palette, through your form, through everything else. If you constrain yourself with your palette and you decide to do like a complementary blue and orange palette, you can then become very, very creative in your form and your expression and the materials and the size that you use. What I'm saying here is not to constrain everything. It's really a constraint of one aspect of the art that can really ground and anchor that piece, where then everything else can become creatively expressed through that. If you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all of the materials, I recommend you constrain yourself on one of the following: palette, form, size, materials, style, theme/mood, and the subject matter. If you pick one or two of those and then you decide exactly what those are going to be, then go crazy with the rest of it. If you constrain yourself on the size, like you do a mini painting, that itself will force you into thinking about details differently, force you into thinking about blocks of color differently than on a normal sized canvas. And there are so many different combinations of what you can do. This is in no way limiting what you make. It's simply giving you a guideline for creative expression.